Some women walk through others' lives without needing an introduction, without elaborate makeup, without trying to be anyone but themselves. They don't have to say anything to draw attention. They don't have to do anything to be heard. Because the moment they enter a space, a unique frequency seeps into the room, slowing everything down, as if the world is adjusting itself to match their rhythm. And if you've ever made a crowd fall silent just by showing up, if someone's eyes ever lingered on you for no reason they could explain, then maybe you don't need to be more beautiful. You just need to realize you're already emitting a kind of energy you never learned how to name. No one teaches you that true beauty doesn't lie in measurements or in stage lights, but in the way you walk without asking for permission, in the serenity that doesn't need to attract, in the way you lean back in your chair without trying to prove anything. The people drawn to you aren't necessarily impressed by your face or your figure, they're mesmerized by something they can't name. An energy field, a silence that carries weight, a gaze without fear. Attraction isn't in what can be seen, it's in what can be felt. And no one tells you that when you walk into a room and someone stumbles over their sentence, when someone pauses their scrolling to watch you pass by, when you don't even try to start a conversation but end up being impossible to ignore, that's not a coincidence. That's the signal of an internal vibration where you don't need to control anyone, yet they still find themselves influenced by you. And that kind of power doesn't need to be advertised or spotlighted because it comes from a place far deeper than all of that, the state in which you live. Many women don't realize they're attractive because they're looking for the wrong signs. They wait to be complimented. They wait to be chosen. They think attraction is a seductive glance or an invitation from someone else. But what they don't know is that the deepest kind of attraction is when someone can't even speak. When they're caught in a storm of emotions they can't explain. When they don't know whether to come closer or back away. When they go home and still can't forget the way you looked at the world with eyes that didn't ask for permission to exist. No makeup is more powerful than inner consistency. No dress is more alluring than a woman who doesn't need approval to know she holds value. Real allure can't be taught because it's not about technique, it's about awareness. When you know you don't need to chase attention, you've already attracted it. When you know you don't need validation, you've already risen beyond all standards. And when you no longer live to please the gaze of others, you begin to glow at a frequency only the deeply attuned can feel. If you've ever felt someone looking at you but saying nothing, ever sensed someone hesitating to approach, ever noticed the air shift, the moment you walked into a room, that's clear evidence you're radiating a frequency that has no name. Don't wait for someone to say it out loud. Don't wait for the world's approval. The subtlest energies are not acknowledged with compliments, they're acknowledged in silence. That silence is unconscious respect. It's wordless awe. It's a quiet but profound touch to the other person's subconscious. Maybe you can't see it because you were taught to look in mirrors, to count likes, to measure waistlines. But the frequency you radiate cannot be measured. It lives in your state of presence, in whether or not you keep promises to yourself, in the alignment between what you think and how you live, in your uncompromising eyes, your unapologetic voice, and your steps that don't wait for anyone's permission. That is where true beauty begins, and it doesn't resemble anyone else. It doesn't need to. You don't need to know how to be alluring. You just need to stop dimming your light. You don't need to force yourself to be beautiful enough. You just need to peel off the mask programmed by society. When you live in your essence, you attract what resonates. When you radiate authenticity, you don't have to call anyone in, they come. And when you show up with your whole self, no performance, no overthinking, you don't have to try to be attractive, because you are the definition of it. Not by anyone else's standard, but by a vibration that only you carry. When a man becomes awkward in front of you, don't be quick to assume it's because he lacks confidence or interest. There are frequencies that don't translate into words, but the body can't hide them. He'll adjust his collar as if trying to straighten himself out, run his hand through his hair unconsciously, his fingers moving repetitively like trying to hold onto something stable amidst internal chaos. He'll either talk more than usual or go completely silent. His sentences lose rhythm. His gaze avoids yours, only to return when he thinks you're not looking. This isn't clumsiness, it's confusion born from a deep emotional touch he has no language to describe. And the truth is, you created that vibration without even trying. Many women mistake a man's lack of composure as a sign of indifference, then wound themselves with questions like, "Am I not attractive enough?" But the opposite is true. when he doesn't know how long he can look at you without revealing himself, when your presence alone disrupts his ability to function normally. When among hundreds, only you make him feel exposed. This is when your allure has bypassed logic's control. His body speaks before his mouth does. Because emotions, when strong enough, shortcut through reflex. There are certain women who make men sit up straighter, adjust their tone, and reset their energy, not because she's arrogant or dominant, but because her presence doesn't allow them to stay in their old comfort zone. Deep attraction is when you don't try to appear powerful, yet you cause others to hold themselves together just to not lose composure. When a man changes his entire state just because you entered the room, it doesn't come from the dress you're wearing, but from the energy field you radiate. You don't need to initiate because your authenticity is already the center of gravity. He won't admit this out loud. Men rarely do, but you'll see it in how he becomes more careful with his words, in the way he smiles a bit nervously, or in the heartbeat he doesn't even notice is speeding up. Don't overlook those signals. Don't confuse incoherence with disinterest. Don't label his awkwardness as lack of emotion. You may be the only one who makes him lose the ability to perform his usual role. And that's not insignificant. It's a sign you've touched a layer so deep he no longer controls how he shows up. Many men are masters at handling situations, good at speaking, poised in every moment. But in front of a woman with grounded, authentic energy, they become a rougher, more hesitant version of themselves than they expected. Because they sense that you're not looking at them with admiration but with illumination. You don't respond the way they're used to. You're silent, observant, fully present. And that forces them to face themselves. You, through your awakened and unapologetic presence, make them realize they are no longer the center of the room. They are drawn to you, but they're also afraid of being truly seen by you beyond the mask they've worn for too long. And if you witness these signs, remember this. Don't shrink yourself to make someone else feel comfortable. Don't dim your light just because someone isn't yet familiar with its intensity. Don't soften yourself to maintain harmony with their hesitation. True attraction doesn't need to be adjusted to fit someone else's comfort zone. It only needs to be recognized, accepted, and stood in with calm, unwavering strength and without compromise. You don't need to change yourself because someone else feels awkward. You're not responsible for making anyone feel at ease when you're simply being real. Honest vibrations are rarely smooth, but they always leave a mark. When you make a man change his tone, shift his posture, or fall into an unexplainable silence, you haven't just caught his attention. You've made him see himself, raw and unprepared. That's a kind of attraction that goes far beyond appearance, a frequency the body detects before the mind can name it, a touch to a deep inner space that words could never capture. And if you've ever seen him act strangely sweet around you, don't doubt it. He's already been touched, and you are the confession, even if he never finds the words to admit it. Not every feeling gets confessed. Not everyone has the words to name what they feel, but eyes don't know how to lie, and presence can't be hidden. You've seen it before. Someone walks past, seems to be on their way, then suddenly turns around for one more glance. You've caught a look that seemed like nothing, but buried in it was a tenderness that didn't arrive in time to be concealed. You felt someone watching you, even though there was no voice, no touch, no spoken word. That wasn't your imagination. That was truth trying to break through the mask of social politeness, because there are frequencies the body detects before the mind can defend itself. When you walk past someone and they glance back a second time, it's no longer curiosity. It's an invisible impact. They can't explain something in you, just brushed up against a part of them they've never known how to name. And that moment, even if only a few seconds long, is enough to unravel them. You don't need to smile. You don't need to speak. You don't need to try to attract. Just by showing up as you are, unfiltered, unperformed, unhidden, you've already become a force they can't look away from. Attraction doesn't live in what's said. It lives in the silence that follows after you've left the room, when you're no longer there, but the air still holds traces of you. When people can't resume the conversation as if nothing happened, because your presence made them brush up against a layer of emotion they've never touched before, that's where the eyes turn into confessions. Where glances back aren't about curiosity, but about not being able to let go inside. You don't need to do anything grand to leave an impression. A slight tilt of the head, a calm gaze, a step that doesn't rush, these are enough to set off a chain reaction in someone's mind. Maybe you don't see it, because you're busy worrying about messy hair, an unimpressive outfit, or a look that lacks confidence. But what others feel has nothing to do with those details. They don't remember exactly what you wore. They remember how it felt when you walked past a feeling they can't name, but that makes them want to look back again. Some people make others turn around not because they're loud or flashy, but because they give their presence weight. They don't need a booming voice. Each glance from them makes others feel like they're being seen through a deeper lens. They don't need to smile often. A passing smile from them shifts the whole room's atmosphere. And when they leave, people can't help but look back. Not to judge, but because something in them refuses to be ignored. If someone's ever looked back at you a second time, don't dismiss it as chance. Don't write it off as manners. Unconscious glances are the deepest kind of proof. A first look can be from attention, but a second look only happens when something can't be left behind. It's a wordless confession. I'm not ready to take my eyes off whatever it is I just saw in you. And when this happens again and again, from different people, in moments you didn't prepare for, it's no longer coincidence. It's the natural reaction to an authentic energy field. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to protect it. Real attraction doesn't need maintenance, just don't dim it. And don't mistake someone's hesitation for lack of impact. Many people feel you more deeply than you realize. They don't know what to say, so they stay silent. They don't know what to do, so they glance back. They don't dare hold eye contact too long, so they wait until you turn away before stealing one more look. That's how true attraction works. Not loud, not flashy, but always leaving an aftershock. You don't need to strike up conversation. Just be fully present in your own energy, and you've already said more than words ever could. When someone's eyes betray the emotion their mouth won't admit, when they can't help but look at you one more time, know this. You've left a mark on them, unconsciously, quietly, but so deeply that even they can't explain why. And you don't need to. You only need to live as you are, and let their gaze tell the rest of the story. There's a kind of magnetism that doesn't come from preparation, doesn't stem from the effort to impress, but arises from a state of complete release, where you're not trying to be anyone but yourself. The moments when you feel ordinary, even a little unpolished, are often the exact moments when others look at you the most intently. Not because you're glowing in their eyes, but because you're undefended. And it's that very lack of defense that makes your energy feel fluid, approachable, and impossible to resist. Maybe you've been surprised by a compliment on a day you did nothing special to prepare. When you thought, I look so plain today, yet someone held their gaze longer than usual or said something that left you confused. There's something about you that I find attractive, but I can't quite explain what it is. That's not a throwaway comment. That's honesty, because true attraction rarely comes from anything specific, but rather from the feeling you carry. And that feeling is strongest when you forget you're supposed to be someone. Many women are conditioned to believe that attraction only happens when they're perfect. Perfectly done hair, flawless figure, makeup on point, carefully curated outfit. But the truth is, those standards create beauty, not magnetism, because beauty makes an impression, but magnetism makes people want to stay. And the strange thing is, you only become truly magnetic when you forget you're supposed to prove you are. It's in the moments you're honest with yourself that you emit the most natural kind of energy, effortless, unperformed. When you stop trying to please others, you settle into yourself, and people feel that. They don't hear you say, I'm confident, but they feel that you live from a place of internal order. They don't see a display of effort, but they sense a quiet fullness that doesn't need explanation. That's what makes you attractive without a specific reason. People are often drawn to those who don't try to draw them in, because in a world of masks and stage effects, the presence of someone who's not trying to become anything is rare. When you stand there calm, not seeking attention, you become more noticeable than everyone, not because you're trying to be different, but because you're not hiding the fact that you're living truthfully. And that state of living truthfully is what people can't look away from. Maybe someone once told you that you have a calming energy that makes people want to be near you. Or maybe you've been complimented for how easy it feels to be around you. Those compliments aren't describing your appearance. They're describing the invisible impact you create, a kind of field that makes people feel at peace, not because you're trying, but because you're not trying to control. You're not straining to be noticed. so attention finds you on its own as a natural response. Here's a truth you should remember. You don't need to be your most attractive version to be deeply desired. You only need to be the version of you that's truly connected to yourself, even in a loose shirt, messy hair, or on a not-so-perfect day. Because true attraction doesn't come from perfection. It comes from unforced presence. When you have nothing to prove, you become unforgettable. Don't be surprised if someone compliments you at a moment when you feel you're least put together. That doesn't mean you shouldn't care for yourself. But it reminds you that appearance is just a small part of the map of attraction. The bigger part lies in softness, in emotional honesty, in allowing yourself to be imperfect and still deserving of space. And when you live in that allowance, you become more compelling than any edited version. You don't need to impress to stand out. You just need to let go of the intention to impress and allow your true frequency to speak. The more you try to manufacture an effect, the more disconnected you become from the real power within. But when you forget about attracting anyone, you start radiating the kind of energy that makes them come to you, effortlessly, not because you're more beautiful than others, but because you're being yourself, and that is always the hardest thing to do. Yet it's also the one thing that makes you truly irreplaceable. Sometimes, what people ask isn't what they truly want to know. A simple, "Can you help me with this? How does this work again?" Or, "Can I ask you something real quick?" may sound like everyday courtesy, but beneath the surface lies something much bigger at play. The need to be close to you, to touch the energy you're radiating, if only for a brief moment and through the tiniest excuse. Some men don't know how to express emotions directly. They're not good at showing interest, and they're not used to admitting they're drawn to someone, but their bodies and behaviors reveal the truth. They create opportunities to step into your world without exposing themselves. They ask for help, pose questions they already know the answers to, or show curiosity about things that have nothing to do with them, not because the subject matters, but because you're holding emotional space for them in that moment. You are the excuse that lets them connect without having to name the feelings rising up inside. You've probably wondered why someone keeps coming to you with trivial, unimportant, sometimes even pointless reasons. It's because you are what makes them feel like they can breathe more easily in a world that often feels too noisy. You're not just someone who can answer their question, you are an energy field they want to linger in. They may not know how to put it into words, so their actions speak for them. You don't need to be flirted with to know you're being noticed. Just observe how often they show up, and how ridiculous some of their reasons sound. When you become the person others want to be near, even when they don't know what to say, you're radiating a frequency you may not even be aware of. It's not a deliberate charm, it's a natural pull born from how deeply connected you are to yourself. When you're fully present, you become like an emotional landmark somewhere. People go just to feel steady again, even if they don't say it, even if they don't understand why. And sometimes, what moves people isn't the way you smile, speak, or dress. It's the feeling they get when they're around you. A subtle sense of safety, a silent pause that doesn't need words, a sense that they don't have to prove anything to be near you. That's something very few people can offer, because most are only present in body, while you are present in energy. Think back to the times someone came to you with a small question, but their eyes never really left you. Their voice sounded just a little different. Their face seemed slightly unsure. They could have talked about anything, weather, an app, a restaurant, but you could feel it clearly. What they truly wanted had nothing to do with the words. They wanted to be felt by you. They wanted to appear in your world, even if only for a moment. They didn't say it, but their actions did. And if you've noticed this happening again and again, not just with one person, don't brush it off. Don't tell yourself, "I'm probably imagining it." You're not imagining. You're reading the deeper layer of connection where the mind hasn't caught up, but the emotions are already vibrating. When you're the one people want to approach just to ask something small, it means they're finding ways to stay in your energetic orbit. They may not know it, but you should. You don't need to overreact. You don't need to rush to conclusions about whether they like you, love you, or want to pursue you, because attraction isn't only born from romance. Sometimes it's simply the feeling of touching something real in a world full of performance. Maybe you're the place where people recognize themselves again. Or maybe you're the one who makes them feel more valuable just because you listen without judgment. Don't dismiss the times they coincidentally needed you. Don't ignore those random questions they ask. Don't overlook the lingering glance after their question's been answered. Because when the reasons no longer make sense but they're still standing there, the real reason isn't the story, it's you. You don't need to create opportunities to be noticed. Just recognize, opportunities are already finding you through the smallest of details. When someone comes to you not for what they say, but for the feeling of being near you, that's one of the clearest signs that the energy you carry has impact. And the most beautiful part is, you don't have to do anything. Just live truthfully, and let that truth do the rest. There are glances that aren't friendly, comments that sound polite but are laced with thorns, and feedback wrapped in sugar but aimed to sting. Not because you're wrong, not because you've overstepped, and not because you've done anything inappropriate. Simply because you show up too authentically, and truth always makes people uncomfortable, especially those trying hard to hide from themselves. You don't need to speak boldly or stand out in a crowd. Just by living honestly, no performance, no compromise, no pleasing, you become a mirror reflecting what others try to conceal. You're not disliked because you're too good. You're unsettling because you're too original. In a world where most people build a persona, you exist calmly in your true form. That disrupts the scripts they're used to. You don't feel easy to manipulate. You're not easy to predict. You're not easily thrown off. And that without you intending it makes them feel smaller. Not because you're attacking, but because you refuse to play along with the illusion. There are women who get criticized even when they say nothing, not because they're wrong, but because they carry a kind of light that forces others to face the unhealed darkness within. The more real you are, the more others feel fake. The quieter you are, the more restless they become. The less you seek approval, the more their sense of control feels threatened. It's not that you're a threat, it's that they're not ready to face the feeling of being exposed without a single touch. So, if you've ever received a passive-aggressive remark, heard insincere feedback, or sensed hostility from someone you've never even interacted with, don't blame yourself. Understand what's happening. Your presence is making them uneasy, not because you've done anything wrong, but because they haven't yet learned to live truthfully with themselves. And when you show up as a living example of what that looks like, they have no choice but to react by criticizing, competing, or trying to make you feel like you're too much. True attraction doesn't only inspire admiration, it also triggers defense. Some will love your truth, some will feel threatened by it, but whether they love or resent it, no one can ignore it. Because you don't just walk into a space, you make them feel themselves, feel what they've lost, feel what they've been trying to hide. And for those not ready to face that, it's too uncomfortable to stay silent. You don't need to change to make others comfortable. You're not responsible for shrinking yourself to fit someone else's insecurity. You don't need to soften just because someone hasn't yet learned how to face themselves. When someone criticizes you not because you're wrong, but because they can't stand the truth your presence reveals, that's not your fault. That's a part of their own growth they have to face. Don't shrink. Don't second-guess yourself because someone thinks you're too much, too confident, too independent, too intense. Those words aren't about you. They're about the narrow lens they're using to live a life that's still unfinished. You don't need to fit into that framework. You're not here to help people stay comfortable in illusions they haven't dared to outgrow. You're here to live truthfully and to let your light do what it's meant to do. Shine, even if it makes some people squint. You have the right to be fully present, even when your presence stirs up instability in others. And if they react, that's their journey to deal with. You're not here to untangle emotions you didn't cause. You don't need to apologize for making someone see themselves. Your presence, if it's real enough, will always create waves. But you are not the wave, you are the ocean. And the ocean doesn't apologize for boats that can't hold balance. And sometimes you will lose relationships because of this, because not everyone can handle the energy of someone who doesn't pretend. But that loss isn't something to grieve, because what can't withstand truth can't walk with you for long. Let what's not solid fall away, let those who aren't ready step back, and you just keep being yourself. Don't soften, don't sidestep. Don't dim your light, because your light isn't here to please, it's here to reveal. And only those who dare to face the truth will have the courage to stay. Some women don't need to be near to have an impact. They don't need to touch anyone, and they don't need to say much. A casual photo, an unintentional caption, or a moment caught accidentally can be enough to make others pause longer, look closer, feel something they can't quite name, not because the photo is stunning, Not because the words are profound, but because you're radiating something real, something grounded, something deep, something no app can edit, no performance can replicate. You're not showing off, you're not trying to be seductive, you're just being yourself, and it's that effortlessness that makes others feel touched. Not by visuals, but by sensation. Not by clear messages, but by a subtle vibration that transcends all definitions. In a world where everyone's crafting images to impress, you become most memorable when you don't try to be. And that's exactly what sets you apart. You've been surprised before when a simple photo received more attention than the ones you meticulously planned. When a short, unfiltered video, no makeup, no posing, led someone to message you just to say, "There's something really captivating about you." You didn't even know what made them stop. But they knew, not through words, but through an inner pull. Because you weren't just appearing on screen, you were showing up with your authentic frequency. And those who are sensitive enough can feel that, even from thousands of kilometers away. Don't underestimate the energy you're radiating. Don't reduce it to luck or a good camera angle. Many people are beautiful, but leave no impression. Many speak well, but don't evoke anything lasting. But you, when you're doing nothing at all, leave a trace. That's not a surface-level effect. That's a deep response inside others when they come face to face with realness. That realness, when it shows up through your eyes, your smile, a subtle tilt of your head, or a voice unpolished and natural, can be felt even when you're not physically there. Because authentic energy is not limited by space or medium. Some people fear the energy you give off, even when you've done nothing wrong. They avoid your gaze through a screen. They don't interact, but they quietly follow. They see you every day, but don't dare approach. Because your energy stirs something in them they can't control. It's not easy to digest glamour. It's not a consumable kind of charm. It's a presence that reminds them of something raw, real, powerful, and awakening. And not everyone is ready to face that. When you radiate a kind of freedom others haven't yet touched, you become a mirror. When you live authentically in a world full of performance, you create a contrast that makes people look inward. Even just seeing you through a screen, people feel unsteady, incomplete, shaken, pulled towards something they can't explain. And if you've ever felt confused by how much attention a single image or unplanned post drew, it's time you understood. You're not just lucky, you're emitting a frequency that many have lost. You don't need more effects. You don't need to stage a scene to seem valuable. The way you live without asking permission, without waiting to be chosen, without compromising with the fake, is what makes you impossible to ignore. And the wild thing is, you don't see it, but they do. They feel you more deeply than you've ever imagined yourself. They touch the energy you release unconsciously, and that is more powerful than any tactic or strategy. Don't doubt the impact of your presence. Even if you don't walk into the room, people still feel like you're there. Even if you don't message them, they still think about you. Even if you don't initiate interaction, they still feel connected. Because energy, when it's real, will always find its way to where it's needed. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for an invitation. It just needs you to be fully yourself, and the universe takes care of the rest. You don't need to do more. You only need to doubt yourself less. True magnetism doesn't lie in how to be noticed. It lies in the state of not needing to be noticed and still showing up with your full life force. And if someone is drawn to you through just a photo, a fleeting moment, or a single sentence, then trust this. You don't need to be close to touch someone. You just need to be real enough that the energy you carry finds its own way, and it's already reaching far, deep, and silently. Some women don't speak much, don't laugh loudly, don't try to be the center of attention, yet they're impossible to forget. Not because of the stories they tell, but because of the feeling they leave behind. A presence that isn't loud but carries a quiet gravity, a stillness that doesn't fill space but shifts the rhythm of everything around it. That kind of presence doesn't need words, it doesn't need explanation, because its silence is a language one made of vibration, only heard by those who are deep enough to feel it. You've sat beside someone without speaking, yet felt a connection, just as someone has sat beside you, said nothing, but still remembered you for a long time. That feeling doesn't come from words. It comes from state, a state where you're not guarded, not forcing anything, not trying to impress. You're simply there, whole, grounded, and still. And in that stillness you've said more than words ever could. You've created a space safe enough for others to let their masks slip. You didn't intrude, but you were present. And sometimes, that presence alone allows someone to see themselves unguarded. There are moments between two people that don't need to be filled with dialogue. A brief glance, a stretch of silence, a shared breath. People don't walk away because you're quiet, they stay to feel. Because not everyone creates the feeling of wholeness in silence. And when you do, you don't need to lead with words. Your stillness does the leading. No one leaves a presence that makes them feel fully themselves without needing to prove a thing. People often feel drawn to those who help them say what they've never dared to voice. But deeper still, they remember those who made them feel understood without needing to explain. You don't need the perfect question. You don't need to offer advice. All you need is to be present with listening that doesn't judge, with an inner stillness that doesn't flinch, and you create a space where others quietly begin to heal without even realizing it. When you walk out of a room and no one says anything, but everyone falls silent for a moment, that's a sign. When you're no longer there but people still feel something missing they can't name, that's a sign. When you haven't tried to attract anyone, yet someone feels confused, disoriented, or drawn back toward you, that's the echo you left behind, not from words, but from the deeper vibration of your being. You may have felt at times that you're not impressive or memorable because you're not the type to stir the air with conversation, but you forget not all impressions come from loudness. Some touches enter the subconscious through stillness. Some vibrations don't explode, but soak deep. You don't need to be the one who captures every gaze. You just need to be the one whose absence makes people realize something meaningful has just slipped away. Quiet strength doesn't announce itself. It doesn't make people say, "Wow," immediately, but it lingers. It makes people think of you in moments no one would expect, when they're alone, when they're still, when they suddenly realize an emotion has faded that they wish they'd held on to. That's you. Without saying a thing, without stepping closer, without claiming anything, yet still present at a depth no noise could ever reach. And if someone has ever messaged you just to say, "You make me feel calm," there's something really special about you, or simply, "I still think of you," don't brush it off as politeness. Those are clumsy confessions of something they can't control. You've stayed with them quietly, without warning, and that staying didn't require a single word from you. You don't have to do anything to be remembered. Just live truthfully, be present genuinely, feel honestly, and the rest will take care of itself. The echo you leave behind isn't in the story you tell, but in the feeling you plant into a space, and that no tool can replicate, no one can fake, because that silence doesn't come from technique. It comes only from depth, the kind you already carry inside. No need for noise, just truth. And that alone is enough to never be forgotten.